Welcome to the infamous edition of the Headstones and Microphones, where we use AI to step into the past through a researched first-person simulation done through creative storytelling of history's most infamous people. Now, let's meet our guest. Welcome to the podcast. Let's start at the absolute beginning, where the public narrative hasn't yet distorted who you were. When and where were you born, and what was your given name?
Hi, Calvin. If we are talking about what I told the world in my own autobiography, I was born around 1836 in Lisbon, Portugal, and my given name was Henry de Debosnys. Of course, depending on who you ask or what investigators uncovered, people believe my true identity is shrouded in mystery, and some even thought I was born in France under a completely different name, like Joseph Lehegerat or Pierre Kef. But as far as my own written story goes, Lisbon is where it began.
What was your hometown and home life like as a child?
According to the account I left behind, I came from a family of some standing, which is why I kept so many secrets later in life. I claimed I didn't want to bring deep shame upon them. I grew up with a father and a brother, and our household was one that valued discipline and a broad worldview, eventually leading us to join military efforts when I grew a bit older.
Was there a story behind your name or a nickname that stuck with you?
People called me many things over the years, often just calling me the Mystery Man or the Tramp when I was wandering through New York. In my own papers, I noted that I formally took on the name Henry de Debosnys in October of 1870. Before that, or during my travels, local records show I went by names like Joseph Lehegerat or Joseph Legerat when applying for naturalization papers. I used aliases like clothes to fit whatever situation I found myself in.
What were you like as a child, and how many years of schooling did you actually attend?
I was highly intellectual, observant, and absorbed knowledge like a sponge. My education was thorough and extensive. I mastered several languages, learning to write and speak English, French, Italian, Spanish, Greek, and Portuguese. I was also drawn to geometry, art, and complex cryptography. While other children were playing simple games, I was training my mind, though my formal schooling gave way to a life at sea when I was still just a mere lad.
Was there a specific moment when you realized you were fundamentally different from everyone else?
It became distinct when I was a teenager. From February 1848 to October 1850, when I was only about 12 to 14 years old, I sailed away with a North Polar expedition under a man named Leclerc. Spending nearly 2 years navigating the frozen, isolating wilderness of the North while other boys my age were sitting in structured classrooms made me realize I operated on a completely different frequency than regular society.
What's a decision that changed everything for you, but felt small at the time?
In 1854, my father, my brother, and I made the choice to volunteer for the Crimean War. I served in the French army in the Crimea for a couple of years. At the time, it felt like a duty, a young man's venture into a grand conflict. But experiencing the chaos of war and the readiness to take life shifts something inside you permanently. It set me on a transient, hardened path that eventually brought me across the Atlantic.
Let's talk about your early run-ins with the law. Before the world knew your name for your most infamous actions, what was your very first arrest or interaction with law enforcement? And what were the consequences?
Before the tragedy in Essex County, my interactions with the law were quiet and obscured by my traveling lifestyle. Rumors always swirled around me, particularly regarding my first 2 wives, who passed away under highly suspicious circumstances. Law enforcement eyed me with deep suspicion back then, but they never brought formal charges against me for those deaths. So I simply kept moving, working as a farmhand along Lake Champlain.
At what moment did you realize your name would never be forgotten?
It was in August of 1882, when the body of my third wife, a well-to-do widow named Elizabeth Wells, was discovered with her throat cut in the woods of Essex County, New York. We had only been married a very short time. The media frenzy broke nationally, and papers like the New York Times and the local chronicles began shouting my name from the headlines. The image of a mysterious, highly educated foreigner accused of a brutal domestic slaughter captivated the entire country.
Did fame make you more dangerous, or did it simply expose who you already were?
The public notoriety didn't change my actions, but it's certainly shone a glaring light on my eccentricities. While I sat in my jail cell awaiting my fate, I didn't cower. Instead, I leaned into the attention. I spent my days writing poetry in Latin and French and drawing intricate self-portraits and pictograms. The national attention didn't make me escalate, but it exposed my complex, dark, and highly unusual intellect to a fascinated public.
Who do you believe betrayed you first? A person, society, or your own instincts?
I would say my own careless instincts and the physical evidence I left behind betrayed me first. When the authorities searched me, they found a blood-stained knife in my possession. I tried to explain it away, but that piece of iron sealed my fate. Additionally, the local community immediately turned against me as an outsider, completely rejecting my protestations of innocence and viewing me as a monster who preyed on their own.
What was your most unique habit or a random fact about you that would surprise people?
People would be astonished to know that I left behind 6 incredibly complex, enigmatic cryptograms that I composed while sitting in my cell. I claimed these ciphers would tell my true story and unmask the entire mysterious affair of my life. To this day, codebreakers and scientists have never been able to solve them. Oh, and I also sold my own corpse to a local doctor ahead of time for $15.
What did the public never understand about the pressure you were under at the time?
During my trial, the public only saw a cold-blooded killer, completely ignoring the sheer weight of being an isolated foreigner facing a hostile, localized justice system. I felt a profound pressure to protect the honor of my real family back in Europe, which is why I chose to speak in riddles, verses, and codes, rather than giving the prosecutors the plain truth they so desperately wanted to pry out of me.
Did you have any known rivalries that defined your career?
My primary adversaries were the prosecutors and the intense legal apparatus of Essex County. They were determined to make an example out of me. It wasn't a rivalry born of a long criminal career, but rather a clash between my defiant, code-writing intellect and their rigid, unyielding determination to see me swing from the gallows.
What personal battles were you fighting privately while the world was watching?
While the papers painted me as a calculated villain, I was fighting a private battle against the total erasure of my mind. I poured all my energy into filling a ream of foolscap paper with doggerel, sketches, and ciphers. I was desperately trying to preserve my thoughts, my languages, and my identity within the cold stone walls of the Elizabethtown jail before the state could extinguish my life.
What was your darkest moment, and was there ever a time you wanted to walk away from it all?
My darkest moment was sitting in that cell, realizing that no matter how many poems I wrote or how eloquently I spoke in different languages, the legal system was completely closing in on me. There was no running away across the lake this time. The realization that my life would end on a wooden platform in a small New York town was a heavy, inescapable shadow.
What truth was hardest to escape when you were alone at night?
The hardest truth to escape was that the world had already made up its mind about me. I maintained my innocence fiercely, but alone at night, the absolute certainty of the gallows was deafening. No amount of linguistic skill or cryptographic genius could alter the fact that the evidence tied me directly to the crime scene in those lonely woods.
When the law finally closed in, how exactly were you brought to justice? Walk me through the final arrest, the charges that ultimately stuck, and the legal outcome of your trials.
I was arrested very quickly after Elizabeth's body was found. The charge was first-degree murder. The trial moved swiftly, and the jury found me guilty of wife murder in March of 1883. The court sentenced me to death. On April 27, 1883, in Essex County, New York, I was led out to the gallows. Approximately 2,000 people gathered to watch me hang. It took only a few minutes for the noose to bring a final, motionless end to my life.
What's the craziest rumor ever told about you, and what part of your story has been exaggerated the most?
The wildest rumors revolved around my body and my past. People claimed I was a serial killer who systematically targeted and disposed of multiple women, including a woman named Eliza who had traveled with me earlier. After my execution, when they examined my body, they found it completely covered in intricate tattoos, which fueled bizarre, sensationalized media reports about what kind of secret life those tattoos supposedly represented.
What is the biggest misconception people have about your life?
The biggest misconception is that I was just a simple, uneducated transient or a common brute. Folklore often paints historical wife killers as mindless thugs. In reality, I was an intensely cultured, multilingual man capable of complex mathematical and cryptographic thought. I was a puzzle wrapped in an enigma, far from the simple caricature the public created.
What would surprise people most about your ordinary human side?
People would be surprised by how ordinary my daily routine was before the crime. I worked as a simple farmhand, doing mundane manual labor on local properties. I spent quiet hours navigating a small boat on Lake Champlain. I had a deep appreciation for poetry and art, things you wouldn't typically associate with a man destined for the gallows.
When, where, and how did you pass away?
I passed away on April 27, 1883, in Elizabethtown, Essex County, New York. The cause of death was judicial execution by hanging.
Was your downfall caused more by your own flaws or by the world changing around you?
It was a combination of both. My inability to escape the suspicion of my own actions and the physical evidence of the knife were my undoing. But it was also a changing world, a society that was becoming more interconnected through newspapers, where a man could no longer simply reinvent himself with a new alias without his past catching up to him.
What past regrets did you carry with you to the end? If you could erase one decision from your life, would you? Or was it necessary to become who you were?
I carried my secrets to the very end, refusing to give up my true family name. If I could erase the decision to carry that specific knife or to enter that brief, ill-fated marriage with Elizabeth Wells, perhaps I would. But in the end, I accepted my path, maintaining to my final breath that a mistake was being made.
What scared you more? Getting caught, losing power, or being forgotten?
Being forgotten scared me the most, which is precisely why I left behind those 6 unsolved ciphers. I knew that by leaving an unbreakable puzzle, people would keep talking about Henry Debosnys for centuries, trying to figure out who I truly was, long after my body left the gallows.
When you look back now, do you see yourself as the villain, the hero, or something in between?
The world firmly cemented me as the villain of Essex County, a man whose skull and hanging noose became museum displays. I saw myself as an unappreciated intellectual, misunderstood by the people around me. I suppose I am something in between, a deeply flawed, mysterious figure who chose to become an eternal puzzle rather than an open book.
Do you have any closing remarks about the interview or the stories you shared that you would like to share with the listeners before signing off?
Only this. My last words on the scaffold were, "I am innocent of the crime. You have made a mistake. The blood on my knife was the blood of a chipmunk. Think what you want of me, but remember that the true story of my life remains locked away in the ciphers I left behind. Good luck cracking them."
And that wraps up another conversation from Beyond the Grave. Thanks for joining us on the Headstones and Microphones podcast. Remember, do better with the life you have been given and choose to do good in this life. Please help spread the word by sharing and following the pod.